This puppet show stays on because of you fools. We've been dancing with the devil way too long. I know it's fun, but get ready to pay your dues. Oh God, come back home. This crazy world is filled with liars and abusers. We need you now before we're too far gone. I hope one day they finally see the truth. God, we need you now.
Well, good evening, Patriots, freedom fighters throughout Saskatchewan, across the country, and around the world. Do me a favor, if you're on YouTube and you are also on Facebook, share the link from YouTube to Facebook. Because I'm banned on Facebook again, still. And that takes out 6 platforms that I would normally be streaming to. However, we are on Twitch, we are on Twitter, and we are on Rumble and Odyssey and DLive. DLive, how we doing over there? Are we good? Looking forward to seeing you in Yorkton. Yeah, looking forward to seeing you too, Michelle. I don't know if that's from the last stream or this one. But speaking of which, we have to talk a little bit about updates and where we're at. So my counter shows 2 viewers on YouTube and 1 viewer on Twitch. It doesn't show any of the others. It doesn't show Twitter, Rumble, Odyssey, or DLive. So I don't know how many people are going to watch this. But it would be appreciated if you could share this out. Greatly appreciated. So, yeah, a couple things to start off with. Oh, the hats came in. So, the guy that I use quite frequently, for hats for my business, the Tree Whisperer, and other things, clothing and that sort of thing. He's also a supporter, and he offered to do up some hats for me. So he comped them. He gave me 6 hats, just like this one. So I just turned around and said, "Well, you better make me 30 of them, because I'm going to take them on the tours, in case people want them. They're pretty cool looking hat. So what the heck." Speaking of tours, Pastor Paul Dubois is the individual who is organizing the tour in Saskatchewan with myself, Laura Lynn, Tyler Thompson, and RB Ham, and somebody else. I can't remember their name. Things are going well. Things are starting to fall into place. It's shaping up really well. Looking forward to it. It should be a good tour. 9 different cities throughout. Well, let's just go have a look here. Throughout Saskatchewan. And I might as well pull up the graphic and pop it up on the screen here. Give me 1 sec. There it is right there. All right. So there we go. So, yeah. No, wrong one. Wrong way. There we go. Let's back up. There we go. So the Let Freedom Reign tour, Yorkton at the Gallagher Center, June 9th, 7 p.m., kicks it all off. June 10th, Melfort, NCF, I don't know what that is, 903 Main Street, 7 p.m. June 11th, Prince Albert, venue still to be determined. June 12th, Saskatoon, venue still to be determined. June 13th, North Battleford, still to be determined. June 14th, Lloydminster, same. June 15th, Swift Current. I think they have a venue, but I'm not sure where. Weyburn has a venue. McKenna Auditorium in Weyburn, and Regina, we're still also waiting. So yeah, really looking forward to it. So True North will have somebody in attendance. RB Ham, Paul Dubois, and others. Again, I don't know. I can't remember who the others are. Thanks, Diane. Appreciate it. Good evening, Carly. Boy, YouTube's really weak tonight. I wonder if I'm being banned there too. Yeah, 6. That's terrible. But it is what it is. So yeah. So looking forward to that one. There's also, of course, another one that myself, Laura Lynn, and Sean Taylor are taking part in, and that one starts on the 23rd, possibly the 22nd. We are going through Winnipeg on our way to Northern Ontario. So I talked to a couple of folks from Winnipeg the other day, and they may put together an event in Winnipeg. So those folks in Manitoba, you may be able to come see us. That'd be good. 22nd would be the date of that one. That would be 7 p.m. Of course, we don't have a venue for that yet, but stay tuned. Things are really just coming together for that tour. Kenora is worked out. It looks like we have a venue. We'll announce it once it's all confirmed. Dryden looks like we have a venue. Thunder Bay, we have a venue. Marathon, we're still waiting for somebody to contact us. So I'm going to do this. If there's anybody in Marathon and or Wawa, then we would do it there on the 26th. So Marathon or Wawa, if anybody is watching this and is from either of those two places and wants to host an event for us, by all means, get in contact with me. Email me at info@ffcs.info. And yeah, and the rest of the tour is working out well. Sudbury is shaping up. The Sioux is shaping up, and North Bay is pretty much confirmed, I think, too. So it'll be good. And then, of course, we have Canada Day, which from all things, and I've been talking to lots of people, so obviously very busy, involved in all of these tours and Canada Day and setting that up. It looks like we're just going to partner with Police on Guard, Veterans for Freedom, Mama Bears, and a few other groups. And basically, they have people on the ground. They're gonna organize. What it looks like is going to happen is James Topp, it seems, is going to walk in on Canada Day to the War Memorial. We'll be there to greet him as he comes in, and then from there we'll march to the Supreme Court and carry on with the rest of the day's activities. The theme is Canadian family. We want to promote the idea of family, and we just want to have a nice day and a good day. And the kids are going to have some 3-legged races and potato sack races and all these good things. So just a good time, just to kind of come together and unite. We all know what our cause is. We all know it's all about freedom, and so let's do that. It'll be from 11 till 5. And representative from Police on Guard will speak. Canadian Frontline Nurses, Kristen Nagel will be there. James Topp will be there. Veterans for Freedom will have a representative speaking. Henry Hildebrand and Herbert hope to be there. Chelsea Hillier is also helping out. And so we're looking forward to it. I asked Brian Peckford if he wanted to come out. Unfortunately, he has other commitments, so that didn't work out. But we're looking forward to it. Should be good. So that's it as far as house cleaning and that sort of thing. So an interesting thing happened here earlier this week. I went to Pierre Poliver's event in Saskatoon. And I went there for one specific reason. So, and I'm going to frame it and I'm going to talk a little bit about it here, here and now. Pierre is running around the country suggesting that he's going to make Canada the freest country in the world. Great. Super messaging. Love to hear it. But do we believe it? I don't, because a lot of times what's most important is not necessarily what these politicians say. It's what's more important is what they don't say. So Pierre's running around denouncing the World Economic Forum, and good for him. The Great Reset and Klaus Schwab, which is interesting in and of itself, just in that regard, because on his campaign team he has John Baird, who's one of the campaign co-managers, and he's very much a member. He's a golden boy of the globalists. John Baird is still a member of the World Economic Forum, and Pierre Poilievre suggests that he's going to ban his cabinet from being part of the World Economic Forum. So great, fantastic. But yet, I guess it's okay that his right-hand man is a member of the World Economic Forum. But there's a bigger question, and this is what I always say is, you know, when people are asking him questions, you have to ask the right questions. And sometimes the right questions are difficult and awkward for the person that you're asking. And as a prospective leader of the Conservative Party, it's an extremely important question, because simply denouncing the World Economic Forum doesn't remotely go far enough in denouncing what is ruining our country. Now, I listened to Pierre Poilievre's speech intently. And to be honest, I like what I heard, as did everybody else in the building. He's well spoken, he's articulate. I can see why he's attractive to prospective voters and CPC supporters. But as I'm listening to his speech, everything that he refers to in that speech are fixing the consequences to the globalist agenda and the SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals, Agenda 2030. That is the root of all of our problems. That is the root of it. And if you don't go after the root, nothing else matters. It's all window dressing. It's all bait and switch, right? For example, the Conservatives love to say, and Pierre Poilievre said it again and got one of the loudest responses of the night, that he'll dump the carbon tax. Well, that's great. But did he say he'll pull Canada out of the Paris Accords? No, because he won't. Did he say he's going to dump the carbon tax? Yes. But what's he going to replace it with? If they're committed to the Paris Accord, which is part of the Sustainable Development Agenda, if he's going to dump the carbon tax, he'll replace it with something else. And that's called carbon pricing, right? This is where they're going to fine heavy emitters in our country. Well, what do the heavy emitters do? What do those corporations do? They transfer that cost onto the consumer. So we end up paying for it anyway in inflation, or in extra costs for services, or what have you, for utilities. So we end up paying anyway. And this is what I'm saying. When the Conservatives, this is what they do. They use different language. They spin to make it look like they're doing something that everybody likes, like dumping the carbon tax. Yay! Let's dump the carbon tax. But you're replacing it with carbon pricing, so it's not going to make any difference. We're still going to be paying more for our utilities, for our services. So, nothing's achieved. And this is why I'm focusing so much on Pierre, because Pierre is most likely, in my view, going to get the leadership of the Conservative Party. He's it. He's the guy. Charest, I believe, is there just to make Pierre look better. And so, here he is. But is he going to denounce sustainable development? Of course he's not. And you know why he's not? Because his party is responsible for it. If he denounces the SDGs, then he has to denounce the parties running to lead. And how are you successful at becoming the leader of that party when you've just denounced them through denouncing the SDGs? The Conservative Party is responsible. They signed it. They're the first government in Canada to sign on to this agenda in 1992. Brian Mulroney's Conservatives. In 2008, the Conservatives created the law called the Sustainability Act. In 2015, the Harper government signed it again, September 27th, a month before the election, of which Justin Trudeau won, and a week later referred to us as a post-national state. So I thought it was extremely important, and I want to have some time at some point. I don't think I'll have time tonight, but I want to talk about the SDGs because, and I'm going to show you the video in a second. The video I recorded, or that I had recorded, and thanks to Lynette and Jake for hanging out for so long, and Kelsey for hanging out so long that night to help me out and to record it. And I wanted it recorded when I asked Pierre the question. You've denounced the World Economic Forum. Will you denounce the Sustainable Development Agenda, the SDGs? And most of you have probably seen the video. I'm going to play it here in a minute. But that video on TikTok alone has over 260,000 views. On Twitter, it's around 43,000, I think. So it's gotten enormously good traction. And this is why I did it, because Pierre is well known. Obviously, he's running for the leadership. He's the leader in that race. He most likely will be the leader of the Conservative Party. And so it's very important for us to hold these people accountable and to question them and to put them on the spot to see how they'll respond. And I wanted to do that and have it recorded. So I did. So let's have a look.
How you doing? What's your name? Mark, thanks for coming. Okay, we'll do a shot here.
I have one question.
Oh, yeah.
I'd love for you to answer.
Fire away.
Denounce the World Economic
Yes.
Forum.
Yes.
You denounce the UN Sustainable Development Agenda, the SDGs.
I haven't read it. I don't know what it is. No.
That's interesting.
Do you want to do a shot?
Sure.
All right.
Very good. Thank you.
All right. I'll have to look at it.
Yes.
I have a simple rule. I haven't read it. I don't comment on it.
You need to read it. It's extremely
Thank you for the good recommendation. I'll have a look at it. Okay. Thanks a lot, guys. How you doing?
So, I call bullshit, of course. There is no way on God's green earth has Pierre Poilievre not heard of the Sustainable Development Agenda. He's been a politician for 19 years in this country. He's voted on the SDGs, Sustainable Development. He voted on it in 2006, 2008, 2015, every time. And yes is what he voted. He knows exactly what it is. And I keep hearing on Twitter and TikTok, yeah, well, Pierre was just being honest. He was just, he didn't know. Okay, well, I'll tell you what. I'm an arborist in Saskatoon, and I've known about this agenda for, some are close to 20 years. And well, why do I know about it? Well, because I'm a little nuts and I spent a lot of time studying it. because I thought it was very important to the sovereignty of our country. But this is the same line that we get from establishment politicians, whether it's federally with any of the parties, provincially or municipally. You get this blank look, this blank stare. They either refer to it or have referred to it as a conspiracy theory, which of course it isn't. It's a conspiracy fact. And the reason why it was a conspiracy was because they all knew that it was in development. They all knew that it was created. They all knew about it. But none of the elected officials for the last 40 years have told their constituents about this agenda or educated the masses in regards to the consequences to this agenda. None of them have done that because they had to keep it quiet in order for them to implement it throughout bureaucracies, federally, provincially, municipally. They knew that it was not something they could sell to the public. They knew that policy created and developed by an unelected foreign entity, cookie cutter policies for the world, wouldn't fly in Canada, in the United States, in a lot of other Western nations. They knew this, so they kept it from you. But they knew it. And Pierre Poilievre has known about this agenda for as long as he's been in politics, I guarantee it. And so people are using the excuse, well, he was just being honest, he didn't know. If that's in fact true, let's just run that for a second. Let's just say that's true, that he doesn't know about it. Is that the kind of individual you want running your country? Somebody that has absolutely no idea about the SDG, Sustainable Development Goals, Agenda 20. You want somebody that has no idea, hasn't read it, didn't find it interesting enough? That's the kind of individual you want leading a political party, leading the country? The fact is this: he does know about it. He outright lied, and he lied because he knows that the track record of responsibility is his party. The Conservatives are responsible for it. He can't go into a leadership race being the guy that's attached to this. He can't be the leader of a party where everybody all of a sudden knows they're responsible for the damage that's been done to our country and will continue to be done to our country because we're being governed by an unelected foreign entity through the creation of this agenda and policies therein. He can't possibly win. His party can't possibly win if they're seen as the party of globalism in this country. And I thank God that there was an opportunity that I could do this, that I could shine a light on it. 260,000 views on TikTok, 60, whatever it is, 46 or 43,000 on Twitter. I don't know how many on Facebook because I'm blocked on Facebook, but I've had lots of people tell me it's floating around on Facebook as well. Thousands of views. So who knows altogether? What a gift a guy like me has been waiting for to shine a light on sustainable development goals and the globalist agenda. What a beautiful thing to happen that we could take advantage of. And finally, there's a ton of people on Twitter asking, what are SDGs? Because they don't know, because none of their elected officials have ever told them. And so I have to remember this. I have to remember that so many people are ignorant, and I'm not saying that in a derogatory way. They're ignorant of this agenda. And so I have to remember that. And what a moment to educate, what a moment to teach and get people to understand why all of these things are happening, why we don't have pipelines, why we have this unfair equalization formula, why there's so much inflation, why our taxes are so high, why the cost of living is so crazy, why there's a war in Ukraine, why they're talking climate change based on BS. It answers so many whys. And this is the time. This is it. This is when people like myself and others across the country have to take advantage of and make sure people understand that this is what we're talking about when we're talking about sovereignty, when we're talking about freedom and liberty and justice and equality under the law and prosperity and truth, these values that we claim to cherish that are specifically under attack. They need to destroy those values in order to achieve the goals of sustainable development. It's the Communist Manifesto on steroids. And people need to understand this. That's why Pierre Poilievre lied and told everyone that watched that. He's lied to every single person that has watched that. That's 300,000 people that he's directly lied to because his party's responsible for it. We need to understand this. I'm not playing a game. I haven't been playing a game for 15 years. I haven't sacrificed what I've sacrificed all these years because I'm playing a game, because I'm playing politics, because I want to get elected. I don't want to get elected. I just want the Canadian voter to understand what we're facing, to understand what this agenda means to our sovereignty and all these values that we claim to cherish. And so that's why I did what I did. And that, you get some people, oh, you ambushed him. I didn't ambush him at all. I simply went, and there's a lot of people that had questions of him that they took advantage of a photo shoot to do it, which is why it took so long. I stood in line for 2 hours, I think it was. I didn't ambush him. I simply asked a politician who is running for the leadership of the Conservative Party, who will most likely end up being the prime minister if people don't wake up before that time comes. I simply asked him a question, the most important question in the history of questions in this country. It's the most important one, and an extremely easy answer. The answer is, no, I do not support the globalist agenda. No, I do not support unelected foreign entity creating policy for our country, for Canadians. No, I believe that Canadians should be creating policy for Canadians in the best interest of Canadians, not some unelected foreign entity that's very communist and fascistic. It's an extremely important, it's the most important question in the history of questions in this country. And he failed miserably. And he lied to 300,000 people that watched that video. If not more. It could be a whole lot more with Facebook and other social media outlets. I have no idea. He lied to every single one of them. Completely full of shit. And somehow people are able to still make excuses for him. And somehow people are able to attack me for simply asking the question, asking the right question. And the other question is, all of these independent media types that we like True North and Rebel Media and Israel Levant and all these people, you haven't asked him that question either. Never have you publicly asked any of them about the Sustainable Development Goals, the Sustainable Development Agenda, Agenda 2030. You've never asked them. Why is that? Is it because you know they're responsible for it? And you don't want to put them in a bad light because you're scared? The truth is more important. The Canadian people deserve to be told the truth. And if there's Canadian people that it's too hard on their ears to hear the truth, too bad. That's not my problem. I'm going to bring you the truth. I'm going to tell you the truth. I'm going to expose politicians that don't tell the truth. And if that's too hard for you, too bad. I don't care. I don't care. I'm not doing this to make friends. I'm not doing this to be nice. I'm doing this to help inspire and motivate Canadians to take their country back. That's why I do this. I'm not doing it to collect. I got enough friends. I don't need any more. I'm doing it because the truth matters, and I'll continue to do it at whatever the cost, because it's too important. So I wanted to touch on that another evening. I'm not sure. Hopefully, before next Thursday when our Saskatchewan tour starts, I'm gonna have a night to discuss again. Not that we haven't ad nauseum on this channel, but I'm going to do it again because so many people are paying attention now to SDGs, to this agenda. So I'm going to set aside an evening to just talk about the agenda, talk about the 17 goals, the 169 targets, the 243 indicators, and all of the consequences to this agenda. I'm going to get into that one night, and very soon, next number of nights. So stay tuned for that. But do me a favor, share this out. Again, I'm in Facebook jail, so anybody that is on YouTube, DLive, Rumble, Odyssey, Twitch, share this over to Facebook if you have a Facebook account, and let's try to beat them at their own game a little bit. Anyways, it is now 8 o'clock, and I want to bring in my good friend Salim Mansur. It's Friday night. It's our night to talk politics. So tonight we're going to discuss very, very good development, from our side of things. They tried to push through the World Health Organization. And again, this is all connected to the agenda. All of this is part of global governance. It's all part of, reducing the sovereignty of nation states to the point of the destruction of nation states. And one of the mechanisms they were going to use through the World Health Organization was this global pandemic treaty. And it was resoundingly opposed by BRICS. BRICS, of course, is Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South America. And they resoundingly said no. They resoundingly said, we're not giving up our sovereignty to an unelected foreign entity on behalf of the people of the most populated countries on the planet. This was an enormous shot to globalism and the globalist agenda. It really was. And so if you look at Brazil, I mean, they were dancing in the streets. They had huge rallies with Bolsonaro, supporting Bolsonaro and his position, because these people are doing what's in the interest of their countries and the people that live in them. And so, it's important for us to talk about it. So without further ado, my good friend Salim Mansur. Hello, Salim.
Hello, Mark. I've been listening to you. Great talk. Great. The past 10 minutes have been listening to what you have been sharing with the audience. Just wonderful.
Yeah, thank you, Salim. It's again, it was sort of a gift. I mean, I had to manage it. I had to get myself in there and stand in line and pretend I wanted a picture with them. But it's very valuable to have that many eyeballs and ears listening to the question of sustainable development and watching an establishment politician lie to everybody. Like that's a very valuable situation that we have to continue to talk about.
Yeah, I mean, Pierre is another conservative in name only, Decepticon, but all of them are the same. And now it is even more clear to people who still have doubts. It should be more clear to them, as it is to you and me,
Yeah.
that the Liberal Party and under Justin Trudeau is a moron. He is as much of a moron as Biden is a walking skeleton. And the people from behind them are operating, and the people behind them who are operating are the globalists, and they're just the mouthpiece, sock puppet. The person now, should be clear to most people who have thought this matter through, especially in Western Canada. I would say the big traitor, the big betrayer of Canada is Stephen Harper. And the legacy of Stephen Harper is what you were discussing. Legacy in the sense that, he had almost a decade to educate the people and to take a principled stand, but he did nothing of that sort. He did just the reverse. He deceived everybody. He signed on to the UN agenda, the Sustainable Development Goal, the Millennium Agenda,
Yes.
UN Agenda 2030. He didn't speak out against the Kyoto Agreement and Paris Accord subsequently, and left the Canadian people behind with a majority government under Justin Trudeau. I mean, Trudeau just walked in, and as you correctly pointed out, the very first interview after the election of 2015 to New York Times, Guy Lawson was to tell the world, welcome, Canada is the first post-national state, so he removed the curtain on what Stephen Harper had left behind for all of the Canadian people. And unless that is very clear in the mind of the Canadian voters, we are not going to get out of the situation. We are not going to become ultimately, an independent sovereign country. Why we are in this mess is we are living a lie. I mean, we have lived a lie. To me, this has become now the touchstone of understanding Canadian politics and Canadian history, that we have lived a lie, and people have to do what was commanded, in the sense, with love and affection, by at least those people who say they are Christian, to do what Jesus said: take the beam out of your eyes. Unless you take the beam out of your eyes, you are a participant in the lies that surround you.
And it's really hard for people, and I've seen this just in the last few days with the Pierre Poilievre video that's gotten enormous traction. Is the response is they don't want to accept it, because then their whole preconceived notion and world view is smashed. If Pierre Poilievre, the anointed one, is a liar and is a globalist, well, that ruins every, as I said, every preconceived notion that anybody supporting the Conservative Party has had. And there's a lot of folks that just refuse to do it. They've refused to accept it, even though it's as clear can be.
Well, I mean, all of that, what you're saying is true, but I would put it in the following sense, they are not going to talk about it because there's nothing to talk about it. You see, a bank robber doesn't talk about where his wealth comes from. That is by robbing banks. He doesn't talk about it. It's unless somebody question, how did he earn his wealth? Where did his wealth come from? So what you did, you didn't ambush him. You asked him the question that nobody surrounding him and surrounding other conservatives are going to ask these conservatives. Of course, nobody's going to ask the Liberal, because they're open about it. They're open about it because that is the role. They are the globalist party, and same, with NDP and the Green. So nobody is going to ask them, and if they ask them, they're going to say yes. This is our agenda, and they have been very open about it, because they have been pushing this agenda as the public policy since 2015, but it can go all the way back to Jean Chrétien, in 1993 when he formed the government. And after all, his government, Jean Chrétien's government, had Paul Martin as the finance minister, and who later on becomes the prime minister. And Paul Martin is a protege of Maurice Strong, the architect of all of this thing that we are talking about. So for them, it is not about evading the issue. It is for them, it is about saying how good this policy is, how great Canada is. We are the number one country. I mean, that was the language of Jean Chrétien. Every time he was asked about anything about Canada, he would point out, well, we are number one, we are number two. The only country maybe number one is Norway or Sweden, and then we are number two, and then we would become number one. So they were the flag wavers of globalism right from the get-go of the agenda that came down with the first Earth Summit.
Right.
The question that the Canadian people, and they are going to be complicit, by not asking the question and not demanding an answer. Because we had an election last night in Ontario, and we might want to talk a little bit about it, but I'll leave it now for the moment. Canadian people in central Canada are not going to ask this question. Those who are going to ask this question are people who are outliers, people like you or me. Will ask that question, and then we are going to be attacked that we did the ambush, we were insulting, we were the bad guys. So it is not about Pierre Poilievre. It is about the nature and structure of Canada, that each and every member in the parliament who is elected, 338 members, all of them belong to this cabal. There is not one in the parliament. I mean, you can't point a finger at one. There's 338 members in the parliament, which is representing the close to 40 million Canadian, 38 point something Canadian, that we are electing them. And there's not one who's going to speak about these issues.
There isn't. And I've, over the years, I've had lots of opportunity to speak to this MP or that one, liberal, conservative, whatever, it doesn't matter. And none of them will talk about it.
That's right. The only person who was going to talk about this was immediately removed from the leadership contest. His leadership was stolen away. That's Maxime Bernier, and he is no longer sitting in the parliament. He would be the only one who would have asked these questions.
You're right.
And he's asking this question from outside, just as you are asking, and there is no one going to pick it up in the media, and nobody's going to talk about it.
Right, and this is it. And then you have those folks that say, you should be working within the Conservative Party to fix this. It's like, well, haven't you been paying attention? Like, how many people do they have to kick out of the party who ask these questions? I mean, we just had another recent incident with Joseph Bourgault in the leadership race, and they completely kicked him out for nothing. But they kicked him out because he's talking about these things. And,
well, I was expelled from the party. You're talking to a person who was expelled from the party.
Exactly, right? 100%, right? So, working from within this corruption doesn't work, because you will find yourself very lonely.
So what you are doing, apart from that question that you asked Poilievre, and Poilievre was completely, I mean, my reading of his body language was he doesn't know you, does he? I mean, I don't think he know.
No.
You haven't met him, you haven't engaged with him before, so you don't know him in person, and he doesn't know you in person.
Right.
So when you walked up to him, as I saw in that clip, you walked up to him, he reached out to you as just another person, that he is going to greet and sell. And that was what it was all about, greet and sell himself.
Yes.
And he was quite, comfortable pulling you close to him. But then when you asked him the question on sustainable development, he didn't know where to run. I mean, his entire body language changed.
He got very small.
Yeah, and he wanted to end it as quickly as possible,
Yeah.
and for him to suggest that he had nothing to say on something that he has not read. This is like talking to somebody in a kindergarten school. I mean, he is trying to be the next prime minister of Canada. That is his ambition, and good for him. I mean, that's no problem. That's his ambition. That's what he's running for, as Stephen Harper did, and as so many others are doing. But then to say that he hasn't read this or he hasn't been briefed about this, and he's going to be, be, if he gets elected, be the prime minister of Canada and doesn't know about it. My very good friend, I won't mention names, but he was one of the constitutional lawyers during the 10 years, close to 10 years, who in Ottawa, during the Stephen Harper government. And so he was at the heart of the issue. He was telling me on this matter. I told him about your clip. We talked about it this past week over coffee, and I told him about it. And he says, "Well, how is it that Pierre Poilievre doesn't know about all of this thing?" Harper was hosting the Bilderberg conference in Ottawa. And he described to me the Bilderberg conference, with all the black limousine draped and all coming in to the government house. A huge affair that happened in 2008 or 2009, So this is all a charade. These people live in lies. They perpetrate lies. But the fault, as Shakespeare makes Cassius say to Brutus, the fault, dear Brutus, is with us and not in our stars. Ultimately, is with us. The buck stops with the people, and that's what happened yesterday in Ontario.
Yes.
An election, and Doug Ford was massively re-elected by a massively small amount of people.
Yes. I heard the turnout was terrible.
Yeah, 53% of Ontarians did not vote. That's more than half the eligible voters did not vote.
Right.
And of the people who voted, 48% people who voted, as I did, of that 48%, 41% voted for the Progressive Conservatives on Ontario, which elected 84 members out of 124 members in Queen's Park. 84 members. So they gave Doug Ford and his party a resounding majority, increased the number of seats after 3 years of lockdown and everything that has happened in this province.
Yeah.
The economy is destroyed. The school systems is destroyed, but the people gave him a resounding majority, and Doug Ford knocked out two leaders as a result of this vote last night.
Right.
The NDP leader Andrea Horwath resigned, and the Liberal leader Steve Del Luca resigned. I believe the Liberal Party once again failed to get the official party status. They elected 8 members. I think you have to have 9 members or 10 members to have official party status. So Liberal Party was ground down. The NDP did not win as many seats as the last time, and she immediately resigned. But the question that hangs, and I've been talking about this with my friend last night and today in London, the city of London, which is about 350,000 people, and one of the major hub in southwestern Ontario. So the city of London has 3 federal seats. All 3 federal seats were taken by the NDP. Provincial seats were taken by the NDP. So this tells you again where the people are, what do we say about national politics? Because the basis of national politics is central Canada.
Yeah.
And in central Canada, this is the result. And this will be the result in Quebec also. And it was all predictable. Um,
Right.
some people called me from Western Canada to ask me before the election what would be my prediction. And I said, I don't want to discuss it because what is going to happen, we all know. It will be a re-elected government, and it's no point going into it. So the historical reality has been that when there is a liberal government in Ottawa, Ontario will elect a progressive conservative government in Toronto. That's the balance of power. So liberals have basically dominated the federal politics in Ottawa, and progressive conservative consequently has been the dominant party in Ontario. And you can see that this is a very nice arrangement. People in Ontario, they will vote federally liberal, and they're going to vote provincially progressive conservative.
So you don't think that this is a really a denouncement of the Trudeau government, the Trudeau?
No, not at all. Not at
No?
all. Absolutely. In fact, Trudeau government had a very nice sleep last night, because the Trudeau government is going to run whenever the next election is going to be, 2025. That is the Liberal Party. Whether Justin Trudeau will be there or not, we don't know. Whether there's going to be a leadership review and he will be removed or he will carry on, that's an open question. And that's the only change that we can look forward to, that is, the people can look forward to between now and then. Because the Liberals basically are running a majority government. Jagmeet Singh and the NDP is in full coalition with the Liberal Party, that is with Justin Trudeau.
Yeah.
So they're going to run in 2025 when the next federal election is going to be, by simply pointing out how bad the Conservatives are in Ontario, that they are not done, have not paid out more money, have not floated more socialist program that the Liberals are going to float, and the people are going to vote for that, balance it out in the provincial politics by voting for the Conservative, because the Conservative will then run in the next election that how they're going to be responsible for budget, and that's the back and forth. So question, again, it's such a simple question, but because media is not going to talk about it, I mean, media is in their pocket. I mean, the political parties are simply the instrument of the propaganda of the oligarchs in Canada, the oligarchs, the Laurentian elite, and the media is the instrument. The simple question for people to ask, and you don't have to be a PhD or a rocket scientist, is how do you expect somebody to clean the bed who has pooped on the bed?
Right.
You got to get somebody from outside to clean the bed. The people who are pooping on the bed are not going to clean that bed, and this is what it is.
That's right. 100%. Absolutely.
It doesn't need anything more than asking that simple question. But the point is, again, Mark, the numbers, that is 53% did not vote. That is the smallest amount of people who voted elected this government.
And so what do you think that's a sign of then?
Pardon?
What do you think that's a sign of in Ontario?
Well, it is a sign of a number of things. It's not one issue. This particular election is taking place in the wake of the 3 years of lockdown.
Yeah.
There is a fear that the lockdown is going to come back again in the end of the fall. That the students going back to schools and colleges and university will be again within the COVID mandate. People are talking about it. The Prime Minister is talking about it because he's refused to remove the vaccine mandate. And Jagmeet Singh is defending that mandate in Ottawa. In fact, he wants it more. So, and the answer is, well, there's another variant of the COVID-19 coming down the pipe. So, they have all the variants from A to Z lined up. And that's the WHO, that's the medical tyranny that we are faced with. So people are driven by fear. That's one very critical factor in this election.
I think there's a little bit of pushback by the people that I'm sort of happy to see. So when China, Shanghai is locked down, and their hair's on fire because of the reemergence of COVID, and then North Korea, they're locked down because of this. We didn't buy it. It didn't seem like the people of North America and Western nations really sort of bought into it. They sort of ignored it, and then they came with monkeypox, and all I've seen is just humor around that, where people again are dismissing it, like they're almost, you know what, I've had enough. I don't want to talk about this. So I'm a little encouraged with that, but obviously it doesn't translate into politics.
Well, the segment of people that are said we have had enough of it belongs to that group, that segment of the Canadian population, which is somewhere close to between 6 and 8 million people, right? Who
Right.
cannot get on a plane, who cannot get on a train.
Right.
And the media needs to keep reminding the balance of the people, the 30 million people, that if you do not follow the mandate, then you are going to pay the price, or that you are going to be isolated like the
Right.
6 million people,
Right.
So we, or whoever, you, who look to that number and say, there are people who are resisting it. Yes, they are resisting it, but they're resisting it at a cost that is mounting. Unless this whole system breaks down, we are living in a gulag, in a prison, that especially those people, the 6 million plus people who have refused so far to basically bend themselves to the demands of the mandate. But the balance, 32 million people in Canada, that is 5 times the population, they are with the government. They're not against the government.
Absolutely.
So there's that factor, the fear factor. There you have it, 6 million detained in the world's largest prison. Correct. We are a gulag.
Yes.
So the rest of the people who support the government mean that anybody in between who has doubts and concerns are voting out of fear. There is a psychological aspect of fear. Then you have that whole category of people who have dropped out of the political process because, and this was what we discussed in 2019 when Maxime was talking about 37% of the people don't vote in the federal election, and I think the numbers have increased. That what difference does it make? I went out and voted last night or last evening, but I knew, what difference does it make? It makes no difference.
Right.
Whatever you say, whatever you speak will make no difference, because the government, and that is the 4 parties that are in Ottawa or in Ontario, in Queen's Park, the NDP, the Greens, the Conservatives, and the Liberal, whatever their differences are, those are intramural conflict that has nothing to do with substance. They are all talking from the same talking point, and they all agree to the same arguments. So unless the people say we have had enough and we are not going to vote for these people, we are going to vote, but we're not going to vote for these people, we are not going to break out of that loop, that cage.
And that
we're
I'm
in.
convinced that day is coming. I just don't know when. It might be a number of years in the future, but it is coming. It has to, or something worse is coming.
It is coming in the following sense, that whatever the Canadians do or do not do, there is a dynamic going on in world politics that is affecting us every day. It is affecting us as we speak.
Yep.
At the simplest level, it is affecting everybody with the inflation that is, escalating.
Absolutely.
Right. And then all the other implication that has converged at this point in time that you and I have been talking about over the past week with the war in Ukraine. The war in Ukraine is a war of globalists against Russia. And Russia is the target because Russia is defending the nation state, the national sovereignty. And we pointed that out in that map that you put up, which I shared with you. Um, the map that was in yellow, the global map that was in yellow, showing the Anglosphere, barely 15 to 20% of the world population. And then the rest of the world, 80%, that is in gray. Well, that rupture is taking place. And the only question that we cannot at this moment answer is whether that rupture eventually, the final stage of it, will it be eventually brought about by a horrific war that
Right.
goes global, or it will happen in some sort of a peaceful manner without a war.
Hmm.
World War II was a great rupture. World War I was a great rupture. And that's the fear that we are faced with. But the rupture is happening. And the rupture means that the vast majority of the country are going to break away from the Anglosphere, that is
Well, and
the
we're seeing,
American
right?
dominated economy and politics. That is now pretty much clear. That is happening.
Well, it is
And
happening.
that is going to affect Canada just as it will affect everybody else.
Absolutely. And it's again this push, for the destruction of Western civilization. And these countries right here, some of the most populated countries on the planet, China, Brazil, India, Russia, South America, or South Africa, I mean, this is why I say that, Russia and China like nothing more than to see, all of these Western nations and the United States and under Biden and Canada under Trudeau, selling their sovereignty for nothing. There's nothing they like more. They're sitting back and loving what's happening.
Right. And this is why it is, again, part of the engagement that you and I have been engaged in trying to do on Friday nights, spend an hour or so in raising the question and answering those questions from our perspective in the best manner that we can do that.
Right.
That is by drawing historical context, and within that historical context, explain the situation. What is extremely important for people to understand, and again, the mainstream media and our education system is not going to provide that, is what does it mean in terms of nationalism and nation state, the politics that we are headed towards in the great rupture. Because here it is, again, to put it very frankly and openly, and there are a lot of implications in it. But let me state it very simply and frankly and openly. In this great rupture that is taking place, on the one side, the globalists, the World Economic Forum, and the entire Canadian institution, totally, basically bound up with it on the one side, as are Britain and Australia and New Zealand and United States and the European Union on the one side, and the rest of the world that is almost, as we've said, 80% of the world that is moving and are going to break away, led by those rising powers, that is China, Russia, India, Brazil, South Africa, and other countries are joining it. The Middle Eastern countries are joining it. Iran, for instance, is part of that situation. Well, what is going to happen is the Western media, which is a very influential media, particularly it is the only media in North America that our people get their information from, and therefore the narrative from, and how they're, basically propagandized. This mainstream media is going to raise the level of vilification and attack on all of these countries. And so any Canadian who looks towards the nationalist countries as a model to break away from the globalists, of which we are now a gulag, are going to be attacked, are going to be smeared,
Yes.
are going to be deplatformed. And what will happen is they're going to play out the pictures from the past. That is, the pictures of Russia, the Gulag that was Russia, the Holodomor, the Stalinists, not the Russia of today. Communism died in Russia, 30 years ago.
Right.
But they're going to be repeating those arguments to reinforce the argument. There's a Russia phobia out here. Anything Russian is now being banned in America, banned in Europe, literature, music, sports, these are being attacked. We are seeing that. So sadly, this is the ironical situation in the West, that if you don't like somebody for whatever reason, then you smear that somebody and call him Hitler. So Putin is a Hitler. If everybody is a Hitler, who is a Hitler then?
They're all terrible nationalists. That's why the word nationalist is just like, wow, you're a nationalist. You're
exactly.
bad.
I mean, Donald Trump, in the very first year of his administration, 2017, he was attacked because of the demonstration in Charlottesville, Virginia, that he's a white nationalist and white nationalists are all racists and Nazis. The people who did the attack are the ones who are in full embrace of the Nazis in Ukraine, for instance.
Exactly.
So it is a projection. What I'm saying is I'm laying down what is going to happen. I'm predicting that's the direction it's going to be. But the irony is that if Canada is going to break out of globalism, if the people in Canada are going to break out by voting for the anti-globalist political party and candidates and leader, we are talking about peaceful getting out, but the globalists are going to use violence. Justin Trudeau used violence against the Freedom Convoy. We, the people, we want to do what we want to do in a peaceful, democratic fashion by exercising our moral, ethical, and political rights, by standing up for freedom and voting accordingly. But our opposition, pardon?
I said, that's not the path they have us on.
Exactly. And they're going to attack us. And you saw what happened in America in 2020.
Yeah.
So we have to be prepared. And that's the discussion we are having, to put it in historical context of what has happened. The Chinese are communists. That's a communist party. Xi Jinping is a communist, but Xi Jinping is also a nationalist.
Right.
And China has not been an imperial power in the 20th century or in the 19th century. China was an occupied country by the Western powers. So India is not a communist country. India is a democracy.
Right.
And India is a nationalist country, nation state. And whatever the difference is between India and China on the question of communism and not communism, they're coming together against the globalists.
Yes.
And same with Brazil, same with South Africa. So what we are seeing, ironically, the alignment that is taking place right in front of our eyes is the alignment. And there's no way for me to explain it otherwise. It is the optics of the alignment. It is the white culture, the white race against the rest of the world. Because that's America, that's Canada, that's Australia, that's New Zealand, and that is European Union.
Yeah.
Sadly, that is where the line is being drawn. So these people, that is a Canadian, Justin Trudeau, Stephen Harper, Brian Mulroney, they all talked about, and they put it in the Canadian Constitution, multiculturalism. But ironically, they're the racists, because the alignment of globalism is a race alignment.
Yes, absolutely.
I mean, if you start analyzing this and if you start penetrating this, then you can see. But this is not going to be talked about by the talking heads on CBC or on
No,
Fox
they'll
News.
do it. They'll do it by demonizing nationalism.
They're already doing it, yeah.
And they have for a while. Yeah, absolutely.
And that's where again the media and the government in the West will raise the level of confusion so that they can control the population.
100%. Absolutely.
And that's why the demand is such for clarity of thinking, for principle, for consistency, and not simply doing it for the optics. And people have to
Virtue
take
signal.
the beam out of their eyes.
Yes, they do. And I think, again, in terms of all of this, I think the beam, I like to refer to as the bubble that people create for themselves, and they don't want anybody coming in to burst that bubble because they like what's inside of it. They're still being able to pay the bills. They can pay the mortgage. Things are relatively comfortable still, so don't burst my bubble. So whether I burst it or you burst it or the circumstances created by this burst those bubbles, they are going to burst. And at some point, we'll have a reckoning, I believe.
No, absolutely. It is bursting because, the law, natural law,
yes,
for instance, gravity, for instance, economic law, inflation, these are objective laws. It is not the subjective that today I'm a man, tomorrow I'm a woman, and I'm going to compete in a competition, which is a women's competition, but I will claim to be a woman and I will be allowed to compete. That is subjective. Right. But that's exactly what has happened in the Western world. They have contaminated and destroyed the fundamental basis of laws and objectivity. Yes. By their actions of subjectivity. It goes back to, and again, we have talked about this in the past, but I refresh the memory. Once the Western countries, after World War II, 1945, you can see the contamination. Now we can go back and draw the dots. The contamination began after 1945. So 80 years later, everything that Hitler, in actual terms, wanted is what is happening in the Western world. That is population control, eugenics. Well, we adopted abortion on demand. Abortion on demand is a culture of death. Yes. Americans have killed over 60 million people. When the Jews talk about Holocaust and 6 million, the question to be asked is, yes, we are with you. We share your sorrow. We stand with you in solidarity. But have you come out and spoken about 60 million non-Jewish children who have been, put to death in North America?
Right.
Right? So there it is. We once we adopted this culture, we adopted multiculturalism and critical race theory. We adopted the culture of death, abortion. We adopted the culture of euthanasia. We adopted the culture of same-sex marriage. We adopted the culture of transgenderism. All of these have no basis in objective law, has no basis in natural law, right, and has no basis in morality and ethics in terms of Christianity. Forget about Islam, forget about Judaism, the majority culture of the West, Europe and North America, is Christianity. Right. Whether it is Catholic, Protestant, Orthodox, it is Christianity. Everything in the last 80 years that the elite has done in the Western culture has been to uproot the Christian value, including electing a pope who doesn't represent the values that is the foundation of Christianity.
Right.
So this immense attack on the very foundation of the Western civilization was not done by people who are in this past 60 years, the new immigrants. In fact, what happened was the new immigrants was used by praising them through the language of multiculturalism and critical identity, race identity.
Yep.
They were used to destroy the Christian values. So you see Biden and Obama and Hillary Clinton and all of them, you know, they have open borders in the South. Bring them in, because they're going to vote for the Democrats, who are basically against the very foundational values of Christianity, but which are also the foundational values of objective laws. So you cannot go, Justin Trudeau cannot go to Africa and preach in Africa the politics of abortion.
Right.
The people in Africa will take the money from Canada by saying yes.
Sure.
But they're not going to implement it. Africa has the biggest bulge in population growth that is taking place right now as we speak.
Yeah.
You cannot do that in the Middle East.
Right.
20 years of American activity in Afghanistan, including the activity of those who joined with America, the coalition of the willing, including Canada, and over $2 trillion spent in these 20 years in one country, Afghanistan. The Americans left behind with nothing to show for it.
Yep.
So when it comes to these, and as again, you and I have spoken about it, and I have constantly pointed out that culture is upstream, politics and economic is downstream. The globalists cannot go to China, cannot go to Russia, cannot go to India, to Philippines, to Vietnam, to Brazil, and preach the globalist values of LGBTQ.
Right.
They're rejecting it. But they're going to take the money, the redistribution. So the whole thing now, you can see the WF agenda on climate change and all of this, UN Agenda 2030, Sustainable Development Goal, was a way to squeeze the North American population, redistribute it to the global South to get their vote at the UN to drive the agenda. And who were they going to impoverish and destroy? The very people here.
Exactly. The first world. 100%.
The first world.
Agenda item number 10 says they want equality both within and among nations. And if you want equality, well, you better bust down the first world and make them equal with the second and third, and then make them all dependent on global governance. Then that's
right.
That's what they're doing.
You know,
Yes,
I feel more and more convinced that if there was one member elected in the Canadian Parliament, within the term of that Parliament, that one member sticking to the conviction of what we are talking about, raising those questions in the Parliament, and then going out using the Parliament as a platform, would bring about the democratic revolution. We would have had a change within one term.
100%.
That one person would have changed it.
I couldn't agree more.
And that is why the entire system is directed to stop that from happening.
Yep. And we have to get smart, and we have to make sure that it does happen. You know, I'd like to see 12 of some Grizzlies in Parliament bringing this down and getting that message out and getting that information out so the revolution can start. 100%.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if you can elect just one in Saskatchewan or in Alberta, that one will become the power. Remember, I am not here imagining and dreaming in technicolor. I'll give you the example right from Canadian history. Brian Mulroney, with his Meech Lake Accord, to implement the political amendment, the constitutional amendment of distinct society, that is Quebec, because Quebec had not signed the 1982 Charter of Rights and Freedom. So
Right.
Quebec remains outside of the Constitution even today. But Brian Mulroney made the pitch, put the entire effort of his government. That was his signature item. He got everybody on board. All the premiers were on board.
Yeah.
And the Quebec Premier, Robert Bourassa, came on board on the condition that that has to be the first thing. The Quebec has to be recognized as a distinct society constitutionally. That means Quebec will have one set of law, or Quebec has one special category within the Canadian Constitution, and the rest of Canada has a different category. It is as if Quebec does not already have the basic power to rule the rest of country. 20% of the population is basically running the country.
Yep.
The example is very clear. You count the number of prime minister Canada's had since the centenary year. Let's do the counting. Pierre Elliott Trudeau. I'm talking about prime ministers who were elected, not the prime ministers who filled the space.
Right.
Pierre Elliott Trudeau, followed by 9 months of Joe Clark, followed by Pierre Elliott Trudeau, then Brian Mulroney, then Jean Chrétien, then Paul Martin, Stephen Harper, and Justin Trudeau. So there's 6 prime ministers, if the count is there. All right. If you remove Joe Clark from there 9 months, you've had only one non-Quebec prime minister in Canada in the last 60 years.
Right.
Those are facts. I'm not making up the facts, right? They all come from Quebec. So 20% of the population is running the country by electing its own the prime minister from its own province, and nobody else has a chance in that sense of the term. Okay, so what happened with Meech Lake Accord? Well, it was one lone member. Nobody even knew that he existed. Elijah Harper in the Manitoba legislature.
Right. Yeah.
He was the only one who, at the last minute, as the clock was running out of time before the vote had to take place for unanimity, he took out his feather and voted against the amendment, and the Meech Lake Accord went down.
Right.
One man.
Yes, sir.
We can do that, but we can only do that if the people in Canada, that is, if there's enough people willing to say, yes, we have tried everything, we're not going to elect any of these members, we are going to go with either an independent member, independent candidate running in that particular riding, or a PPC candidate, and say, yes, we will take the risk. We will take the turn. We will gamble. We're going to support this man. We'll send him to Parliament and let us see what happens.
Absolutely. 100%. Salim, we have to cut it short tonight. I'm taking my wife to a movie.
Absolutely. You are not sovereign. Neither am I.
Yes, I am definitely married. Yeah. So, yeah,
Okay.
But thanks again. We needed to have this conversation. It was a good one. And I'll have it uploaded to all our podcasts, and it'll get out there.
Yeah, absolutely. Have a good evening. Thank you very much for having me.
Yeah, thank you, Salim. We'll see you again next week.
All right.
Oh, no, we won't see you next week because
you're on the road.
We're on the road doing the Saskatchewan tour. So
whenever, but we can be in touch. You can give me a shout.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely.
Okay.
All right, my friend.
All the best.
All right, another good round with Salim. As I mentioned, I have to go take my wife to a movie. So that's it. Responsibility. But yeah, a very good discussion and another important one. So that's a wrap. Yeah, I don't think there's anything else. That's it. Just remember, globalism, bad. Nationalism, good. All right. Ciao for now, guys.
One day, one day, one day, I hope you see the truth. This puppet show stays on because of you fools. We've been dancing with the devil way too long. I know it's fun, but get ready to pay your dues. Oh God, come back home. This crazy world is filled with liars and abusers. We need you now before we're too far gone. I hope one day they finally see the truth. God, we need you now.